8 Japanese kami and their origins. Hey guys, Culture here. Today we're going to take a look at 8 Japanese kami and their origins. More specifically, we'll explore the Japanese creation myth and how these kami are depicted nowadays. Apologies in advance for butchering the transcendently beautiful language of Japanese. Japanese mythology comes mainly from 2 texts, the Kojiki, or Records of Ancient Matters, and the Nihon Shoki, or Chronicles of Japan. These books were essentially propaganda, creation myths and lineages that ultimately resulted in the ruling bloodline of emperors, thus justifying their right to rule over common folk. But these texts are far more than just shameless justifications for imperialism. They also birthed the traditional religion of Japan, Shinto. So much of Japanese culture is owed to these texts, and the influences of Buddhism from China and India. Let's explore some of the colourful characters that inhabit the Japanese backstory. Number 1 and 2. Izanagi and Izanami. Our first entry is a twofer that explains how the islands and people of Japan were created, along with many of the other gods. During the creation of the universe, there were 5 deities that came into existence, collectively known as the Kotoamatsu Kami. Following the separation of heaven and earth, new deities came into existence, known as the Kami Yonaneo. It was the last generation of these deities, a brother and sister known as Izanagi no Makoto and Izanami no Makoto, who brought forth all other kami. The pair was given a naginata known as Ame no Noboku, or the heavenly jeweled spear, which they used to stir the seas below them from atop the bridge between heaven and earth, known as Ame no Kihashi. This formed Onogoro, an island that the two lived on and where they came to love each other. When it came time to do the dirty and make some babies, they underwent a courting ritual whereby they circled a pillar in opposite directions, meeting on the other side. However, when they met, Izanami spoke first, breaking the tradition of the man speaking first. The offspring from this union were malformed as a result, and not considered kami. Remember, this was 8th century Japanese culture. Don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. So they tried again, and this time Izanagi spoke first, mating to produce the 8 islands of Japan. Keep in mind that at this time Hokkaido, Tsushima, and Okinawa were not considered part of Japan. Further copulation brought about many more kami, until the birth of Kagutsuchi, the kami of fire. Now, I don't recommend you imagine this, ladies, but let's just say that giving birth to a literal incarnation of fire can do some damage. The birth of Kagutsuchi killed Izanami, driving Izanagi into a rage. Izanagi killed Kagutsuchi, splitting him into 8 volcanoes, and in the process creating the kami of the sea and rain from his blood. Izanami's death was the first in all creation, and she retreated to the shadowy land of the dead, known as Yomi. Yomi is described as being geographically alike to the world above, but covered in complete darkness and inhabited by the shuffling souls of the deceased. Izanagi followed her there, hoping to convince her to come back. However, when he saw her in the torchlight, he realized her flesh was rotting and infested with maggots. He fled at the sight. I guess he's pretty shallow. Personally, I would stick with the love of my life even if her skin crawled with bugs. Okay, maybe not. As Izanagi fled, he was chased by Izanami and a group of old hags called Shikome. The ways Izanagi attempted to elude his pursuers were surreal, to say the least. He hurled his headband at them, which turned into grapes and tripped up the Shikome. Then he threw his comb, which turned into bamboo shoots. Next, he peed against a tree to create a river, separating him from the Shikome. They continued anyway, so he threw peaches at them for some reason. Finally, Izanagi sealed the entrance to Yomi with a giant boulder, thus trapping Izanami and the Shikome within. Izanami vowed to take 1,000 lives a day as revenge, while Izanagi said he would give life to 1,500 people. Izanagi then sought to cleanse himself of the miasma from Yomi, and so bathed, in doing so creating even more kami as he shed his clothes. Can you imagine generating a god every time you strip naked? Well, more than one, I mean. Washing his face produced 3 of the most important kami in Japanese mythology: Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo. Number 3. Amaterasu. Amaterasu, the incarnation of the sun, came from Izanagi's left eye. Amaterasu ruled the heavens and is regarded as beautiful, compassionate, and loved by all. She is by far the most famous of the Shinto kami, with her name being familiar even to Westerners thanks to shows like Naruto and games like Smite. It's no wonder why. The emperors of Japan are said to come from Amaterasu's bloodline, thus giving credence to the idea that the emperors and their descendants are in some way special. Furthermore, Amaterasu bestowed the imperial regalia of Japan upon the first emperor of Japan, Emperor Jimmu. These 3 sacred treasures legitimize the divinity of the emperor and are passed on to each new emperor when they ascend to the throne. These 3 treasures are the sword Kusanagi, representing valor, the mirror Yata no Kagami, representing wisdom, and the jewel Yasakani no Magatama, representing benevolence. To tell many of the popular stories about Amaterasu, perhaps I should first introduce her brothers. Number 4. Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi, the incarnation of the moon, came from Izanagi's right eye. Tsukuyomi is a portmanteau of the Japanese words for moon, tsuku, and reading, yomi. This is a reference to the interpretation of the lunar calendar and the moon's differing phases. Weirdly though, there's not actually many stories about Tsukuyomi, and he isn't often depicted in art. There is one tale that explains why Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu, the moon and the sun, no longer reside together in the sky. Tsukuyomi was sent by Amaterasu to represent her at a feast held by the kami of food, Ukemochi. However, he was unaware that Ukemochi prepared the food by regurgitating it from her mouth. As she faced the ocean, a fish emerged from her gullet. As she faced the forest, meat came out. Finally, as she faced a rice paddy, she produced a bowl of rice from her mouth. Tsukuyomi was so disgusted that he killed Ukemochi, her corpse turning into grass, rice, and beans, and her eyebrows becoming silkworms. Amaterasu was enraged by this, and from then on refused to look at her brother, moving to a different part of the sky. Number 5. Susanoo. Susanoo, the incarnation of storms, came from Izanagi's nose, which is kind of a disgusting implication when you think about it. Susanoo was given control of the seas, like Poseidon, and he is considered something of a trickster, like Loki, but his character is far more complex, ranging from downright childish to brazenly heroic. In one tale, he comes upon an old couple with their beautiful daughter, Kushi Narahime. He discovers that their 7 other daughters had been killed by an 8-headed serpent, and that it would soon be time for their last daughter to be sacrificed. Susanoo devises a plan whereby he lures the serpent with 8 bowls of sake, and then, whilst it drinks, chops off each of its heads. As a reward for his heroism, he is given their daughter's hand in marriage. However, more often, Susanoo is a troublemaker whose anger and pride enrage the other kami. In the most famous story, Susanoo is banished to Yomi by Izanagi for being disruptive, whiny, and uncontrollable. Before he goes, however, he wishes to bid farewell to his sister Amaterasu. Amaterasu senses his intentions are impure, and so proposes a challenge with Susanoo. Whoever can create more divine beings is the victor. Amaterasu produces from Susanoo's sword 3 goddesses, while Susanoo produces 5 gods from Amaterasu's chain. Amaterasu claims this means she has won, since the 5 gods were created from her chain and thus belong to her. Her stubbornness on the matter pushes Susanoo into a fit of rage, and he flings a half-flayed horse into Amaterasu's weaving room, a sacred animal to her, and kills one of her attendants. Shocked by this, Amaterasu despairs and goes into hiding in a cave, shrouding the world in darkness. She is finally lured out of the cave by the kami of merriment, Ame no Uzume, who dances naked upon an overturned tub in front of a mirror. The laughter of the other kame lures Amaterasu out of the cave, and her brilliance is reflected in the mirror, creating dawn. Amaterasu's depression is dispelled, and Ame no Uzume becomes the kame of dawn. The story doesn't end so well for Susanoo, however, as he is banished from the heavens. Number 6. Hachiman. Hachiman is commonly thought of as the kami of war, divination, and culture. Hachiman's history is muddled by syncretism with Buddhist religious beliefs, but he is generally considered to be a great military strategist who defends Japan from foreign invaders. For example, in the late 13th century, Hachiman was said to have defeated an invasion by the Mongol Chinese Empire using a kamikaze, meaning divine wind. In reality, this kamikaze was a giant typhoon off the shores of Kyushu, which obliterated the fleet sent by Kublai Khan. Another kamikaze once again deterred the Mongol Chinese invasion fleets, strengthening religious belief in Hachiman. It's no wonder, given this history, that Japanese suicide bombers in World War II were similarly given the title of kamikaze, a sign of their willingness to sacrifice everything to defend Japan against Allied forces. Hachiman was incredibly important to the people of ancient Japan for another reason: divine heritage. In the same way that the royal family of Japan claimed divine heritage back to Amaterasu, so too did the many clans that spawned from the royal line. Essentially, there were getting to be too many royal descendants, since emperors and empresses were having up to 50 kids each. They decided to cleave off different branches of the royal family with new surnames in a process known as dynastic shedding. 2 of these clans, the Minamoto clan and the Taira clan, claimed rightful inheritance to the throne and became embroiled in a war known as the Gunpei War. The conflict depended upon each of the clans proving that they had a divine thread that entitled them to the throne. The Minamoto clan claimed to have descended from Emperor Ojin, a ruler who had great military victories and was considered to be the avatar of Hachiman. Through this rhetoric and a series of military victories, the Minamoto clan vanquished the Taira clan, and their leader, Yoritomo, became the shogun, the military leader of Japan. Number 7. Tenjin. Tenjin is the kame of scholarship and learning. I felt like I needed to mention him since learning is what we're all about here at Culture Crash. Tenjin is a special case, not born from previous kame, but rather knowingly created by the people of Japan. That may sound kind of weird, but hear me out. Sugawara no Mikizane was a famous poet and scholar in the 9th century. From humble beginnings, Mikizane pulled himself up through bureaucratic rankings based on his ridiculous raw talent to become the scholar of letters and professor of Chinese literature. Eventually, Mikizane gained the favor of reigning Emperor Uda and his son Emperor Daigo, and became Minister of the Right, one of the most powerful political positions in Japan. Keep in mind that at the time, it was unheard of for someone outside the ruling classes to obtain this position. Unfortunately though, this rise to prominence was about to be cut short. Many of the top posts were occupied by members of the Fujiwara clan, who wanted total dominion of the ruling class. The Fujiwara clan bribed an outsider to claim that Mikizane had a plot to put Daigo's brother, Tokio, on the throne. Daigo, out of paranoia, fell for this trick and exiled Mikizane and Tokio. Mikizane was stripped of his titles, his reputation ruined, and shortly after being exiled, he died. However, odd occurrences began to kill off many of the conspirators in Mikizane's exile. Family members of his rival, Tokihira, began to die at a very young age, and a storm struck the imperial palace in 930 AD, killing the man who was bribed by the Fujiwara clan. In fact, Emperor Daigo died in that same year. People came to believe that these acts were carried out by the vengeful spirit of Mikizane, and so measures were taken to appease him. His title was reinstated, the papers for his exile were ceremoniously burnt, a shrine was built to honor him, and Mikizane was deified as the kami Tenjin. Tenjin is associated with the Chinese plum, a plant that he loved while alive and wrote many poems about. Due to his position as the kame of learning, students often pray to his shrines. By complete coincidence, the Chinese plum happens to bloom in February, which is when exam results are announced in Japan. Number 8. Ebisu. Ebisu is the kami of luck and fisherman. Ebisu is commonly pictured as a chubby man, smiling and holding a fishing rod with a red snapper, a fish also commonly associated with good luck. He's also by far the most jolly of the gods, and if you've ever been to Japan, you'll probably recognize him as the smiling face that greets you at many shop fronts. Considering how important fish are to Japanese culture, it's probably no surprise that Ebisu is one of the most worshipped kami in Japan. Businessmen prayed to Ebisu for luck in their financial endeavors, whilst fishermen prayed to Ebisu for bountiful catches and safe waters. But there's another reason people love Ebisu. He's an underdog. Remember how the first time Izanagi and Izanami mated, they produced malformed offspring? One of these children was born without any bones, and named Hiruko, meaning leech child. By the age of 3, he still had not developed bones, and so he was set adrift at sea in a boat made of woven reeds. Hiruko washed back up on shore and was found by some of the local natives. Delighted by his ever-smiling face, they raised him as their own. Under their care, he grew bones and became the god Ebisu, representing perseverance and luck. Japanese mythology is awash with foreign religious influences and historical reconfigurations, but these have only served to make their beliefs even more rich and unique. Yeah, okay, maybe some of the stories are a tiny bit weird, like peeing to make a giant river so you can escape from old women. But that's what makes it so fun to learn about. See you all next week. If you enjoy what we do here at Culture Crash, please consider supporting the show via our Patreon, where we have a bunch of awesome rewards, or by checking out our online store. All links are in the description below.